sugar, and spice. On Tuesday this week, I was visiting my mom and my brother David's family. I was driving with my mom and my wife. We took the ferry from the peninsula to Balboa Island. Every time I go to Newport Beach, I try to stop at Sugar and Spice for a frozen banana. It was crowded in the island. It was spring break, yet synchronicity came our way. There was a parking space right in front of the building. We got out of the car and ordered our stuff. I told the person who was serving us that many moons ago I worked there. She wasn't interested in the slightest. We sat down on the bench and began to eat our dessert. I see a picture on the store window saying taken in the 60s. I look at it closely and said, "It looks like Brad Schultz." At the same time, my wife said, "Brad Schultz is in the picture." She read this from the sign. Dot and Bob was sold in 1945 and became Sugar and Spice. They began to also sell blocks of vanilla ice cream with a tongue depressor wedged inside, dunked in melted chocolate and then covered with a topping. Thus, the Balboa Bar was born. Brad Schultz, second from left in the banana yellow uniform, worked at Sugar and Spice in the 60s when Bob Fitch was the owner. Crates of bananas were delivered in the back alley each week and sorted by size. They were peeled, stuck with a stick, and frozen for 24 hours. There was a vat of melted milk chocolate at each window, so customers could watch their bananas being dipped and rolled to their choice of toppings. Chopped nuts, crumbled butter sprinkles, rainbow sprinkles, or chocolate sprinkles, Jenny's. In 1995, Helen Connolly bought the business from a woman named Betty Banto, who taught her how to make a perfect Balboa bar. I'm hoping that Brad will recognize the rest of the young men in the picture. I think Steve LaMontagne, a good surfing buddy of mine, is in the picture. What a small world. While I was working there on July 20th, 1969, the first man walked on the moon. I will never forget that day. Just imagine that your cell phone has more power than the computers that were on board. The technology at that time was highly advanced, yet today it's primitive. Science was highly regarded in that time and place. Unfortunately today, we have a wave of people who totally disagree with the findings of our scientific people. It's amazing how we can see images from the past and the future. While I was eating my dessert, a flood of memories came to the surface. What an incredible life we have. I don't even think that Brad knows about this. Hope you enjoyed this, Brad. Gary Dahl worked there for a few years. There is a thread of love tying us all together. I heard last week from a Facebook post from William Baker that John Morris passed away from chronic leukemia. John and William were childhood friends. John was a year older than me. He had a brother, Mike, who was my age. My twin brother and I knew the Morris since first grade. Looking back, it's amazing how we create such a web that truly ties us together. For example, John's dad was my brother's head high baseball coach. He was an incredible coach in life. He taught us to play the best that we can. If you lose, don't get upset. Just learn from your mistakes. He made playing baseball fun. Frankly, I wasn't a good baseball player. I love the game. My brother John was an incredible player. I remember playing against a team whose star pitcher was Lee Havens. He was an incredible pitcher. I don't think our team ever beat them. I see that Lee is on Facebook. I love to see how his life turned out. He married his high school sweetheart. I'm mentioning this because every day we make a web of connections that I call memories. These connections tie us all together. Mike was a great friend with both my brother and I. I've known Mike since first grade. We have a series of friends that we have known for many moons. Mike has maintained a friendship with them throughout the years. I guess I kind of faded away. It seemed like all of us have incredible building blocks of people that we have met over the years. There was a time that Mike was surfing buddies. We shared the love of the ocean and the beauty of being alive. I find this quite fascinating. I'm amazed at how simple life is, and at the same time, how complex the web of God is. I haven't talked to John in over 47 years, yet I will always remember his smiling face. He had a great heart. He loves adventure. One of my fondest memories of John was when he bought a motorcycle. He was so thrilled. He asked if I wanted to ride. I reluctantly said yes and got on the bike. He gave me a fast and furious ride in the neighborhood. There is a theory which I love, which goes like this. When we die, we return to the essence of God and the universe. This means that John's essence is inside of us. His body is now gone, yet his spirit is eternal. I send prayers to the Moore's family. Their family was an intricate part of my life, which I will treasure forever. Rest in peace, John.
Surfing adventure. Yesterday, I received this wonderful message and pictures from Brad Schultz. It's amazing that we remember certain memories from past events. Even when we went through the same event, we have our point of view and memories. Brad. Here's a blast from the past. Remember our surf adventures to the ranch with your brother and John Smiths? I think we drove up in your Mustang to Halama and then hiked in. As I recall, it was very windy and a minus tide. One of you slipped on the rocks and dislocated an elbow. We scaled the cliffs and flagged down the ranch security guard, and he took us back to the car, and we drove to Lompoc Hospital Emergency, where they popped the elbow back into place. I'm not sure what happened next, but recall resuming our adventure and your parents praising us for our quick thinking. Do you have anything to add? I'm sending this to John, too. Richard. Yep, that was me. I remember we got back to Newport. The next day, you guys surfed at 22nd Street. I waited in the car, and it was freezing. A very cold snap hit Newport Beach. The temps were in the 40s. I love the photos. Never saw these before. Looks like another web of life tying us together. Thanks for sharing. I forgot that John Smith was on our journey. Thanks for reminding me. I'm going to put this in my book, Family and Friends. It's a great surf story. It's amazing what surfaces when you combine memories. I have no recollection of surfing at 22nd Street when we got back and dropped you off. John said that he and I drove back to the ranch to complete the adventure. Richard, you did. But before you did, you guys went to 22nd Street. I went along for the ride. Afterwards, you guys went back to the ranch. By the way, I never heard about your adventure afterwards, and I don't recall what happened after we went back. It's kind of funny. Brad didn't know which one broke his elbow and had to be taken to the emergency room. Well, I do. I was the one. I forgot that John Smith came along on this journey. I have a picture for this. I remember how cold it was sitting in the Mustang at 22nd Street. I still can feel the cold. I remember sitting in the car. Thanks, Brad, for sharing this. It's another web tying us together.
Hi, Marley. I was just meditating. I had a wonderful experience with your brother Lee. He told me to say hi, and he loves you deeply. He said he was always with you and never left you. When he died, a part of him became a part of you. It was a wonderful experience. As a kid, I looked up to your brother. He is very kind to my brother and I. Anyway, I just wanted to pass this on. I didn't want to bother you. Chris Dahl. Chris and I have been friends since elementary school. My brother and I have fond memories with the Dahl family. We spent many days with Chris and his family. His family was very kind to my brother and me. One of my favorite memories was making a film with his brother Greg. Chris, John, and I were in a scene where we were robbing a bank. Chris's dad worked for Morgan Stanley and allowed us to film inside of the bank vault on a Saturday. It was so much fun. Years later, I heard that Greg won awards for being so creative at that time. This was years before computer automation. I remember walking home with Chris, John, and I after our track workouts. The smog in California was so bad that our throats would get sore. We would stop at a building and get some water from a drinking fountain. I remember drinking the water and my throat being so sore. Thank goodness the laws have changed. Hopefully, our current president won't reverse them. I remember Chris and I collected samples from the bay for our biology class. That was fun. Mr. Haley was our track coach and biology teacher. When we had to study for a test, we would study at the library before school started. Chris liked to play pranks with his brother Gary. I remember one time, Gary tried to get into the car, and just before he got in the car, he would speed up. He did this for probably a mile. I was impressed by Gary's determination. Eventually, Gary got into the car. My brother and I really couldn't stay up past 8 o'clock. Many times, Chris would come over to visit, and we would just pass out. We couldn't help it. I'm sure it was amusing with Chris. Two teenagers couldn't stay out past 8 o'clock. Years later, we are still friends. I call him about twice a year so we can catch up on things.
More childhood friends. Scott Adams. Scott was our neighbor where we grew up. We became good friends when we took a cooking class together. She was my partner. Johnny Coots. Johnny was my brother and I first surf partner. We had many incredible surfing sessions with him. Rest in peace, Johnny. Johnny was probably one of the best surfers back then. He could nose ride like no one else. When the short boards came along, Johnny adjusted his style and ripped. John Deemer. I grew up with John and his brother Bob. They lived 2 doors down from us. I spent many hours playing at their house. We used to put a tent in our backyard and spend the night when we were young. Suzanne Jackson. One funny story with Suzanne and her family. When we were probably in first grade, our family was invited to have dinner at their house. They served lasagna. I still remember it clear as day. It was made of cottage cheese and corn. Well, to make a long story short, my brother and I devoured it. They couldn't believe that 2 little kids could eat so much. Nevertheless, we were never invited back again. I have fond memories of Suzanne. I haven't heard from her in over 40 years. Sandy Peterson. Sandy was part of the Cartier program that went to Argentina. Wow, what a great time we had. I will never forget it. Gary Hill. Gary and I go back to 7th grade. I remember that Gary gave me his brother's Surfer magazine collection for $5. My brother and I enjoyed those for years. Gary's family owned the Marine gas station in Newport Harbor Bay. I have fond memories of Gary. He had quite a sense of humor. Lenny Foster. I first met Lenny when Lenny was in 5th grade. Even back then, he was an incredible surfer. Johnny Coots introduced my brother and I to him. Lenny and Johnny Coots were years ahead of their time. Last time I talked to Lenny was in Hawaii 20 years ago. He was living in Kauai. I would love to talk to him again someday. James Wilcox. Our family was good friends with the Wilcox family. I will always remember their Christmas parties. One year I first heard the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Wow, that was a game changer. My brother John loved James's mom's pancakes. Unfortunately, I never had them. Best wishes to the Wilcox family. Dale Christensen. I first met Dale through Nick Roth. All of us became surfing partners during high school. Dale was a great guy to be around. Bob Seegers. My brother, John, Dave Ball, and Bob would occasionally play tennis together. Bob was a good friend of my brother. Casey Weaver. I knew Casey since grade school. I loved his family. I used to go surfing with his brother Buff to San Onofre. Wow, sweet memories. Rest in peace, Buff. Dave Ball. My brother John was good friends with Dave. He introduced me to the Ball family. Great family. Diane Barrett. I always had a special heart to Diane and her parents. Her parents were so kind to my brother and I. I used to meet Diane at the Balboa Bay Club to go swimming. Rick Barrett. I admit I really didn't know Rick very much in high school. I began to know him through Facebook. I like what I see. He definitely knows how to enjoy life. Bill Bemis. First met Bill in 6th grade in a basketball game between schools. Great guy. I would always enjoy my conversations with him. Definitely enjoys life to the fullest. Carol B. First met Carol in the 7th grade. In high school, we attended several exchange student functions. One was at our house. Had an incredible time. Great family. Her uncle owned a ferry going from the peninsula and Balboa Island. Steve Bennett. I've known Steve since junior high. He was a great water skier. Steve was best friends with Mike Morris. Sean Bissonette. Sean and I go way back to elementary school. He was a great basketball player. Definitely a smart guy. We used to love going to his house for trick-or-treat. Don Bush. Boy, could Don high jump. I had good times seeing him at the river jetties on his kneeboard. Last saw him 10 years ago in the mountains of Colorado, where he lives. Kevin Charles. Kevin and I go back to elementary school. He lived down the block from us. I spent many a day at the Charles house. Kathy Chichester. In 6th grade, my brother and I took cotillion lessons. I remember dancing with her. In high school, we attended social activities with the exchange students. Loved her mom and dad. Jim Kokas. Chris Dahl once took me to Jim's house. We were standing around the kitchen table. I saw for the first time a Scientific American magazine. I never knew it even existed. I love being introduced to new things. Jim is an incredible poet. I enjoy reading his poems. Monica de Carlina. Monica was an exchange student from Argentina. I had a special heart for her. Recently, we have known each other better on Facebook. Mike Donner. Mike had several adventures going to the ranch with us. Needless to say, we had an incredible time. Such great memories of perfect waves all to ourselves. Craig Oakler. Craig was across the street neighbor. He is extremely funny. I've known him more being on Facebook. Matt Greer. Matt was an incredible swimmer. I've known him since 7th grade. Mark McClellan and Matt were best of friends. Jim Hart. Wow, Jim Hart. We first met in grade school. As a matter of fact, we are even Cub Scouts. His mom was the den mother. I had a great love for the Hart family. Really loved their dog. Steve Hendrick. First met Steve through Craig Perkins. He was incredible at baseball and cycling. Rest in peace, Steve. I will always remember the good times we had together. Scott Holt. Scott and I go way back to elementary school. I spent many hours playing with Scott. Pat Hubble. Pat learned how to meditate and once told a friend he didn't realize the mind was so powerful. Rest in peace, Pat. May we someday cross paths again. Leslie Allwood. Leslie and Steve are twins. Recently, I have been friends with her on Facebook. I love to hear her adventures in life. Steve Allward. Steve and I were cross-country friends. My brother and I really enjoyed Steve. He was extremely kind to both of us. I have nothing but fond memories of Steve. Rest in peace. May you be running in heaven. Jan Fitzgerald. I have known Jan since elementary school. Jan lives life to the fullest. She is a great example of someone who practices what she preaches. I love her posts on Facebook. Rick Fleming. Rick was another great cross-country runner. Both my brother and I have great memories of Rick. I haven't heard any news about him since high school. Grant Gelker. Grant was a great football player and body surfer at the Wedge. I have known him since 7th grade. A great guy to be around. I loved his sense of humor. Gretchen Gribble. I have known Gretchen since elementary school. She is retired now. Gretchen spent years as a teacher. With her easygoing personality, she must have been a good one. Julie Horman. Julie was a classmate in my poetry class. I was shy back then. I gathered up the nerve to ask her to go to the senior prom. She had another guy who asked her out. I have nothing but fond memories of her. She was inspired to be around. One time we went to UCI expecting to see Maharishi Mahesh Yogi from the TM movement. The event was canceled. Bruce Herman, aka Speedy. I've known Bruce ever since elementary school. The nickname Speedy was because he ran so fast. Bruce was an incredible sailor for his time. Dave Johnson. Dave started shaping surfboards in his early teens. He still has a thriving business today. He is an exceptional surfer. I still remember a movie at the Newport Harbor High Surf Club where David is surfing right and left at the ranch. Even Lenny Foster was blown away. That's real talent. Dana Kilroy. I really didn't know Dana very well in high school. I have since known her through Facebook. We are on the same wavelength in life. What more can I say? Her ideas on life seem to reflect the same in me. Barbara Barrow. Barbara and I really didn't communicate much in high school. Yet, we're up to date with her on Facebook. I love to hear about her adventures in life. Steve Knox. My brother John and I have known Steve since elementary school. Steve was a great baseball player. We played many pickup games together. Remember, at one school reunion, Steve said to me, if my brother John didn't stop playing baseball, he could be playing in the majors. Rick Cover. Rick was friends with Chuck Cook and Craig Perkins. He was involved in organic food movement. Both of us were involved in preventive medicine way before its time. Steve Kopensky. All I remember is Steve, that he was brilliant. My brother John and I have known him since elementary school. I loved his humor. Christine Kopitsky. I have known Christine since elementary school. She is another person who is extremely bright. I remember even in 5th grade saying to myself, wow, she is smart. Anne Lawrence. Anne is another person I have known since elementary school. Her dad was a leader in the Boy Scouts when my brother and I were Cub Scouts. Great family. I will always remember her great smile. Stuart Lewis. Back in high school, Stuart and Warner Weiss were taking computer programming classes. Mind you, this was way before its time. I didn't even know back then that my entire professional career would be a software engineer. Hey Stuart, wherever you are, I'm sending my kind regards to you. Lynn McGuire. Lynn was another fellow classmate I had known since elementary school. Back then, her pride and joy was horses. I remember her bringing a toy horse to school, and I can see her beaming talking about horses. Mind you, this was in the early 60s, and I still remember it clear as day. Rick Mayer. Rick was our next door neighbor in grade school. His dad was a professional golfer. In high school, he was on the cross-country team with my brother and I. During our childhood, I remember being invited to swim in his pool. Both my brother and I loved it. Mike Moores. Mike was another great friend that I've known since elementary school. John and I loved the Moores family. His dad was our baseball coach. He taught us how to play for fun and to make the best efforts you can. He was an exceptional coach. I played many hours of tennis with Mike. In high school, he was a surfing partner. I remember the time when his family took my brother and I to go to Malibu area to go surfing. We had a great time. Marley Moore. I've known Marley since elementary school. Her brother Lee was a mentor to my brother and I. We both loved the Moore family. Being on Facebook, I love to hear about her adventures in life. She is an inspiration to me and my brother. Tom Newmeyer. I remember in elementary school, I was totally into baseball. Mind you, I wasn't a good player. One Saturday morning, Tom invited me to his house to see a baseball signed by Babe Ruth, who at that time was the greatest ball player in history. I still remember that day. Tom was a great friend of Chris Dahl. He definitely had a great sense of humor. Bob Ogle. First met Bob in 7th grade. Bob was an incredible tennis player. I mean, incredible. As a matter of fact, his older brother was also an incredible player. I remember watching him practicing on my way home from school. I was totally blown away. He had tennis in his blood. Last time I saw him was at Kmart many moons ago. Ron Obernofer. Ron was best friends with Sean Bissonette. I have known Ron since high school. I really didn't know him too well. I've attended the school reunion since then have a better connection with him. Also through Facebook, I have learned more about him and have communicated with him. Doug Oliver. Doug is another person who I've known since elementary school. Mark McClellan and Doug were great friends. Doug was easygoing and enjoying life. I remember inviting him to some of my birthday parties. Buddy Owen. What can I say about Buddy? I've known him since elementary school. Buddy was quite the character. I remember Buddy riding a bicycle to my house carrying a backpack. Inside was vegetables and a juicer. He made vegetable juice for my brother and I. Buddy started to meditate after he came back to India. He was on the forefront of meditation way before its time. Cheryl Peterson. Cheryl and I have known each other since junior high. We had many classes together. She was part of the Cartier program, so we developed a greater friendship with each other. She went to Argentina a year before my brother and I. Her sister went along with John and I. when John and I traveled to Argentina. I have fond memories of both of them. Greg Poindexter. I first met Greg in junior high. Greg was another member of our incredible trip to Argentina. I have great memories of Greg. He has a zest for life. I saw Greg 7 years ago at our reunion. We had a great time talking about our trip. Some memories carry you for life. Greg is one of them. John Smith. John goes back to my junior high school years. In high school, John and I played two-man volleyball together. He was an incredible spiker. John was an awesome surfer. Once he entered a surf contest at Doheny, where he surfed under another friend's name who couldn't attend the contest. Well, John won the contest. I have many moments, great moments with John. He has a great sense of humor. When I came back from my journeys around the world, we tried to get into a Rolling Stones concert in Long Beach. Mark Rasmussen. My brother John and I've known Mark since 7th grade. My brother John introduced me to Mark when I first started learning how to surf. Mark lived at the river jetties in Newport Beach. It was only a block away from the beach. We stored our surfboards there. Mark was an incredible surfer. I have many memories of surfing with him and the boys at the river jetty. Lenore Rede. Lenore is another person I've known since junior high. She was a part of the exchange programs. She was a kind and caring person. Traits that I like. She was also the prom queen. Furthermore, she was extremely smart. Michael Reed. Michael Reed and I were on the cross-country team. My brother and I really liked Mike. Our cross-country team really supported one another. Mike was a great example of being a team player. We had a great time running together. Margaret Rogers. Margaret was another person who participated in exchange programs. She had a spark for life and was delightful to be around. She had her brother Howie, who my brother and I spent time together in track. I have fond memories of the Roger family. Todd Schlesinger. My brother John introduced me to Todd in 5th grade. They became great friends. I remember going over to Todd's house and just hang out. I haven't heard from Todd in over 40 years. Tom Schick. Tom was a great wrestler. During my freshman year, we would have lunch together where we became good friends. I'll never forget the friendship we had. I was extremely shy at that time, and Tom was easygoing. Thanks, Tom, for being who you are. Scott Schaefer. I remember in 5th grade, Scott and I would ride our bikes to his house for lunch. His mom would make bologna sandwiches for us. Scott had an incredible family. My brother and I looked up to his brother Rick. I have many great memories of Scott. Doug Snyder. I knew Doug mostly from playing for fun basketball. He was a great dribbler and shooter. I was a good shooter, a less than average dribbler. He was fun to play with. In high school, he was a great kneeboarder. Brad Schultz. My brother and I had great memories of the Schultz family. During my senior years, Brad, John, and I decided to hike into the Bixby Ranch. To make a long story short, I broke my arm in the process. During my high school years, we developed a great friendship. I still have a place in my heart with Brad and his family. Jody Schwartz. Brad and Jody were items in high school. My brother John liked her in elementary school. I have a poem that I wrote about the relationship. Jody was a kind person. in elementary school. She could kick the ball better than most guys. She was in the league of her own. Pam Scolacasso. First met Pam in 7th grade. We were in homeroom together. She had a great personality. She lived across the street from the river jetties, where we all had common friends. I read her Facebook posts with delight. Linda Shotwell. First met Linda during junior high. She had a zest for life. I didn't hang out with her. During one reunion, we talked about our adventures. We emailed each other for a period of time. I love to see her post on Facebook. Steve Silsby. Steve is another person who I've known since elementary school. I have fond memories of this Silsby family. At Halloween, they would have kids bobbling for apples for the treat. It was a great idea, and a healthy one to boot. I send my regards to the Silsby family. Jim Stansberry. I knew Jim since junior high. During high school, Mark McClellan and Jim became good friends. Jim was a swimmer and water polo player. Dave Smith. First got introduced to Dave through Greg Perkins. We would go surfing together. At school, we would hang out. Great guy, great heart. Warner Weiss. Warner and I have known each other since grade school. One day, he came to visit our house and walked into our bedroom. He was totally surprised. He didn't see one sports memorabilia. He was expecting a room full of it. We both laughed. Warner took computer programs classes well ahead of his time. Mind you, this was in high school. Eric Weiner. My brother John knew Eric more than I did. Eric was fun to be around. Since the last 10 years, we have been in contact with each other. Eric loves to grow organic food. I love to cook organic food. I love to use ingredients from all around the world. Each year, Eric goes on a heli-skiing trip to the mountains. John Wilcox. My brother and I have great memories of the Wilcox family. I have known them since elementary school. I will always treasure their Christmas parties. Hey John, do you remember using your windshield wipers to spray the customs control officer near San Onofre? Valerie Wiggers. Valerie is another classmate I have known since elementary school. She was kind to all. It's amazing who the people we grew up with reflect our lives today. Personally, I think many of Valerie's traits rubbed off into me. Bob Wilson. Bob was another person who I've known since grade school. We played basketball together, baseball together. His dad was our coach one year. My brother John was a star pitcher. His dad was a great coach. He didn't yell at the kids. Bob got a lot of his traits from his dad. Wherever you are, Bob, my brother and I send our regards. Terrence is another great friend I had. His parents came from Ukraine. I remember going to the house, and for a snack, we would have pickled herring and dark bread. I loved it. It was completely outside my comfort zone, yet I loved it. Terrence was an incredible basketball player. I will never forget my time with the young family. They treated me like a part of their family. More childhood friends too. Jenny Farber Kosko. To be honest, I really didn't know Jenny that well in high school. Yet, I've been reading her posts for around 7 years, and they highly reflect my view on life. It's amazing that Facebook will reflect a person's view on life. I really resonate with her posts. They are uplifting and inspire me on my journey in life. They reflect her state of mind and being. I like that. Robert Reed.
Robert's dad was the head of the lifeguard at the Newport Beach Lifeguards for many years. They lived directly on the beach. I went to his house a few times and felt how lucky Robert was. I didn't know Robert well, but many of my friends knew him extremely well. Robert is still surfing and enjoying the ocean. Keep on surfing, Robert. Diane Davidson Rippery. You can really pick up on people just listening and watching what they post. Sometimes the thread of life is woven, yet it happens and we aren't aware. We miss it by a few years. For example, Rick, I just noticed you lived in Overland Park. I lived in Prairie Village for 5 of the best years of my life, 1997 to 2002. Are you still there? I was at Knoll and 87th Street. We still live there. We lived around 155th and Knoll. You live in Arizona. You ever come out this way? Maybe we would love to see you. Yes, we're in Arizona. Both job transfers for my husband out of California. I had 2 kids in elementary school in Prairie Village and had a bunch of lovely friends due to that. If you come through Arizona, please let us know too. I miss gardening in Kansas City. It would have been delightful if our paths were crossed. Life has many different ways of weaving a web. This is one example. Devin Doan. About a year ago, I was visiting my mom and she brought out some family albums. And one of the family albums was a Christmas card from the Doan's family. I was in elementary school at the time. This is probably before I even met Devin. Our parents were friends together. Many times there's a thread which ties us together and we don't even know about it. Devin really enjoys life. She always enhanced the room with her presence. I like that about her. Jeff Wilcox. I have known Jeff since elementary school. Jeff's parents would throw a Christmas party which our family would love to attend. I have a special place in my heart for the Wilcox family. Jeff was an incredible swimmer and water polo player. He swam circles around me. I love reading his adventures on Facebook. Rocky Dixon. Good old Rocky. My brother and I really liked the guy. He was a year older than us. He had something in his aura that made people really like this guy. His woodwork is out of this world. You can see he puts everything into his work. Kathy Kelly Crone. Kathy's passion was swimming. Here's a post Kathy did in honor of Coach Barnett, who died recently. Rest in peace, Bill. He is my first swim coach with Coast Clippers in 1964 to 65. When I went to high school, Newport Harbor High, he allowed me to work out with the boys team, so I didn't have to travel to Costa Mesa High School for practice. Thank you, Coach Barnett. I really enjoyed reading her posts. She carries a passion for life. Scott Sumner. I've known Scott since elementary school. He lived in the same neighborhood as us. I spent many days playing with him. Both my brother and I have fond memories of him and his family. They moved to Laguna Beach around 6th grade. I remember collecting bottles at the beach and getting refunds for returning them. There also was a freaky haunted house that Scott showed us. Michael Lawler. I love to hear Michael's adventures of sailing around the world. Michael is extremely bright and used his wit to outfox his opponents in a dangerous situation. This is from the Orange County Register. They had the Ventures heading toward Fiji. Lawler and Burdock spotted a distress flare and searched the darkness to find 2 fishermen in a small boat. They told them back to Nui, where they were greeted like heroes. We saved their lives for sure. There are also stories not fit for children. They were concerned about pirates in the Gulf of Aden, but a British couple they met at the Maldives, Paul and Rachel Chandler, reassured them it wasn't bad. As the traveler made his passage, however, they were approached by an unmarked speedboat carrying an armed man. They played dumb and never stopped. We have to deal with the situation, Lawler comments. They might have been beginner pirates. This is just a tip of the iceberg of their incredible journey. Gilbert Barnes. What can I say about Gilbert? Gilbert was friends with Johnny Coons. When I came back from India, Gilbert was one of the few who was interested in learning how to meditate. This was many moons ago. Gilbert still loves to meditate. We haven't seen each other in a long time, yet we still call one another. I love his sense of humor. I consider him a great friend of mine. Dan Miller. I remember around 5th grade, Dan came over to our house. We had this old funky piano that no one ever played. It was really out of tune. Yet Dan sat down and completely blew our mind. He played like Beethoven. He was a genius and a master at such a young age. He was older than us. Our brother and I spent time playing many different sports with Dan and the gang. Dan has a great sense of humor. Mark Dwyer. Mark was part of the River Jetty gang. We all loved to surf and enjoy life. My brother and I really enjoyed Mark. He was a year younger than us. I have many incredible memories of surfing with Mark. He also loves to ski. About a year ago, my brother John attended a funeral for Steve Hudson. Mark organized the event. My brother loved to see Mark again. It was many years since they have seen each other. Jerry Smith. As I remember, Jerry loved football. There was a group of kids that played football since grade school. Jerry was one of them. Jerry has a keen sense of humor. He laughs at life. Both Rick Chatillon and Jerry love to banter each other. I love to read his Facebook posts. He is a grandfather and is proud of it. William Baker. William was best friends with John Moores. Many of my friends were more closely connected to William than I, yet we knew each other. There is a web where we are all tied together. Recently, I learned from William that his best friend John died. I wrote some words on his passing. William has a great heart. Lee Haven. When I was probably in the 5th grade, I played baseball. Mind you, I wasn't very good. My brother was. Anyway, we would play some games where Lee was the pitcher. To be honest, I was completely petrified facing him. He threw the ball faster than anyone I knew. Not only that, but he could throw a curveball, which was quite unknown at that time. Lee was humble and had nothing to prove. We are still in contact through Facebook. Rick Chatillon. I first met Rick in high school. We both ran cross country and track. Rick was an incredible runner. He also loved to surf. My brother and I have many incredible memories of Rick. He would bring laughter and humor to our workouts. Terry Albritton. Terry Albritton went on to set the world record in the shot put. He is regarded as a pioneer in importing the training techniques from the Soviet Union to the United States. These methods including power cleans, plyometrics, and other fast-twitching muscle training techniques. Terry had a great heart. My brother and I truly respect him. He was years ahead of his time. Terry Horn. Terry and Terry Albritton were girlfriend and boyfriend. I really didn't know Terry that well. I read many of her posts about Terry's passing. I love to hear her posts. They are uplifting. Each one of us has bumps in our roads that we hit, and Terry has a great attitude towards life. Paula Jensen. After many years, Paula has resurfaced in my life. I haven't heard something about her in many years. Some of my friends said she moved to Australia. Yet when we messaged each other on my birthday, she said it wasn't so. Paula brings life to the party of life. She is kind to all. I love those chickens of hers. She moved away from the city and lives in the countryside. Bill Folsom. Last time I saw Billy was at my 8th grade birthday. Somehow my dad arranged for us to go to a baseball game. It was at Angel Stadium. He arranged for us to go to the dugout and meet the players and go to the dressing rooms. We all got baseball signed by the players. Nolan Ryan was one of them. In 7th and 8th grade, he was my buddy. I remember him talking about surfing the famous Tijuana slows years ago. It's a famous yet unknown surf spot. I'm still in contact with Billy today. Gary Dahl. Chris liked to play pranks with his brother Gary. I remember one time Gary tried to get in the car, and just before he got in the car, he would speed up. He did this for probably a mile. I was determined. I was impressed by Gary's determination. Eventually, Gary got into the car. I like Gary's sense of humor. He was a great guy to be around. More childhood friends 5. William Beckett. I first met Bill in junior high. Bill was definitely a character. He had a strong sense of humor. Bill was a great basketball player and surfer. His family belonged to the San Onofre Surf Club, which allowed him to surf at San Onofre. Back then, it was off limits to the public. Bill and his family was portrayed in a book, Barbarian Days, A Surfing Life by William Finnegan, winner of the 2016 Pulitzer Prize for Autobiography, included in President Obama's 2016 summer reading list. I have read this book and highly recommend it. William Finnegan is a great storyteller and author. Here's an example of the book. Excuse me while I kiss the sky. Town was flat. The whole island had been flat for a week. I had a day off work. Beckett had some acid. We dropped. That was the strange, sinking, truncated phrases people used for ingesting LSD before daybreak, then stood around a fire in Kobati's backyard and waited for dawn. Old Kobaki never seemed to sleep. He jabbed the fire with a crowbar, his face a golden oval against the velvety blackness of his yard. He cackled when Beckett joked about the roosters waking up his wife. Maybe our scheming, bewizarded landlord wasn't such a bad guy. We took my beflowered car, the former Rhino Chaser, and headed north. Bill was a great guy. I will always remember him. Bruce Limburn. Bruce was our student body president. I recall he spent much time in Sacramento working on a statewide board. I remember Bruce had a wily sense of humor. His passion is flying. Andy Williams. I've known Andy since junior high school. He lives in Seattle, Washington. I love seeing his posts with his grandkids. Andy loves to attend sporting events. Vince Harpole. I've known the Harpole family since elementary school. One of my fond memories was when Vince invited me to his house to see a rabbit. That was the first time I ever got close to one. There was a period in my life that Vince and I would go surfing together. This is after I came back from my journeys abroad. My brother John, at the same time, would bicycle 100 miles with Vince. The Harpole family was incredible at wrestling. His brother Chris was a coach at Stanford University for over 20 years. Their family is famous in the wrestling world. Kathleen Harpole. I love that Kathleen thinks outside of the box. She's been an advocate for the Enneagram process since 1985. Here's an excerpt from her website. Kathleen is a personality expert. She has been working as an Enneagram transformation author, researcher, teacher, trainer, and coach since 1985, and has an integrated and holistic view of the Enneagram. Her in-depth inquiry process helps you understand new ways of working with old problems. Kathleen's vast knowledge of many systems allows her to effortlessly track your words, expression, tone, and body language in a way that will help you identify what is at the root of your current issues. With this insight, you can transform relationships, achieve your potential, and understand more about your own unique path to wholeness. Most importantly, Kathleen works to quickly and radically deepen your understanding of yourself and others, which empowers you to develop the critical self-awareness needed to live a more meaningful and fulfilling life. Carrie Dalebout Peters. Carrie and I go way back to elementary school. She was extremely good at tetherball. I remember she won almost all her matches. Many of my close friends were close to Carrie. Joyce, Devin, and Patty come to mind. They still socialize for over 50 years. Mark Jacoby. Mark passed away a few years ago. We both loved to cook up a storm. We thought it'd be good to get together and cook up a meal. I will never forget his humor and laughter. Gary Robinson. The Robinsons family was another family who lived in our neighborhood. His brother Jeff was on the same cross-country team and track team. Gary was a year younger than my brother and I. My heart has many fond memories of the Robinson family. I will never forget the time your family made it into the ranch and surfed rights and lefts. That was an incredible day. Jeff Daly. Jeff is an incredible waterman. I remember even in junior high school, he was surfing at a high caliber. Jeff still surfs and body surfs today. He is a legend at body surfing at the Wedge and the Pipeline. I love to read his posts. He loves to ride the waves of life. Brad Crowell. Brad is another childhood friend. He lived in the same neighborhood. Brad was good friends with Carter. Carter moved to Europe for some years during high school. I hitchhiked from Germany to Denmark to see him. Here's an excerpt from my book, Fractal Fairy Tales. We hitchhiked from Germany to Denmark. We were looking for a friend named Carter Robinson. We arrived at the dock where Carter lived and found out his boat left a few days earlier. The person told us where they might be for a few days. We hitchhiked to the city and found Carter. It was quite the surprise. We stayed for about a week. They were planning to go to Norway for a while. They asked us if we wanted to go, but we declined. Carter had a guest named Brad Crowell, who was an old neighbor of mine. We grew up together. Brad, I would love to talk to you again someday.